Alan Titchmarsh, nice to meet you again.
I was looking for somebody else in the car then. I thought we'd left somebody behind.
What a thrill it is to be in your limousine. Here we are, leaving your home. You're touring the country with this new book, Trowel and Error.
You know, in my limousine, it's with a chauffeur. It's very nice, isn't it? This isn't mine, you know, this one. It's like I got out of a taxi once in Yorkshire, and this chap had been going all the way, this taxi driver, I always said, you know, you look like, and he wouldn't let me get a word in edgeways to say who I was. He said, Titchmarsh. He said, and I said, Titchmarsh. He said, that's him, Titchmarsh. He said, and he's going all the way. I got out of the car, at the taxi, we've actually got to Ilkley, which is where I live. And I said, well, I am him, actually. And he said, gosh, I bet you wish you had his money. Well, I feel a bit like that now in this posh car. Yeah.
Do you always travel like this?
Well, when you're on a book tour, you know, they're full days, and you set off from home, it can be any time in the morning from 8 till 10 o'clock, and you're going, I mean, tonight I'm finishing in Sheffield at about 9:30, I should think. So if you drive yourself, it's a recipe for disaster. So, and then you get people like you hopping into the car to chat. So I couldn't drive and talk to you, you see. I think you learn as you get older. You learn to go with the flow, and you learn to say yes when people say, would you like to sit down?
Do you mind people like me bothering you on one of these days? Because you're very, very busy. You've got a line of people all the way around the buildings when you're signing your book. Does it bother you having people talking to you all day?
I'd only be going to sleep if you weren't there. No, not really. I think most of the time, when you're a writer, you spend a heck of a lot of time on your own. And you have to, and I enjoy that. I've always been fairly happy in my own company, but it does mean then that when you go out, you also enjoy meeting folk, being a bit more gregarious. You get the best of both worlds, and you know, as Alan Bennett says, it gets you out of the house, doesn't it?
We're going to talk about the new book in a moment from now. We're going to talk about your childhood in a moment. But one of the things you write about in the book, and it is an entertaining book, is the fact that you are a private man a lot of the time. You do like to put yourself away in the shed or wherever and write and be by yourself. Is that important to you, time by yourself?
I think it keeps you grounded. I like everybody else, I pick up copies of Hello and OK when they're in the dentist or wherever they are, and you look at them and you think, goodness me, but I don't really want to be in there. I mean, if they snap you somewhere where you're doing something, then fair enough, but life is real, and the gardening on the telly and the writing is what I do as my job. It's more than a 9-to-5 job. I mean, it's a vocation, really, and it's a passion. But I don't see fame as being the ultimate goal. It's a byproduct for me. And so as long as I can do what I really want to do, which is communicate to people how important gardening is, how enjoyable gardening is, and write stories, which I also love doing, then that's what I'm happiest doing, and the rest of it comes with the baggage, as it were.
One of the things I find most concerning today is you see all these fame academies and pop stars, and the first thing they always say is, I want to be famous. And that, I would imagine, is the worst bit of it, because with the fame, as we've read in the papers recently with certain stars, it has its downsides. The stuff that's good about being a star is making your name and being trusted and having books out and being popular on the telly, really, isn't it?
I think people expect that when you're on television that it gives you imbues you with some kind of superhuman quality, that you're not normal, you're like them. Well, I mean, yes, the very essence of television is specialness, but you should be aware of that, I think. It doesn't, you know, none of us is perfect, but I do think in the old days when there used to be this thing called noblesse oblige, nobility has its obligations, you know, when the lord of the manor would look after the serf. I mean, I think today there is a degree of célèbre oblige. Celebrity has its obligations. It does. I mean, I've just been in bookshops this week where people have queued for an hour and a half for a signature, and they spend perhaps 30 seconds with you, and they're very pleasant. They say lovely things about your TV programmes, and you thank them, and you hope you give them enough contact, as it were, to feel worth their while queuing for an hour and a half, and then off they go. Now, how could I be churlish and say that I hate that? Of course you don't. But it's not the adulation you like. It's actually quite touching that it means something to people, and that you are a bit of people's lives, and I do feel obliged not to let them down. I'm not saying I never will, because I think it's folly to say that, but I do think you owe them a bit of something, and that's just to be yourself, really. I think if you're honest when you're on the screen and you are you, then there's less chance of them being disappointed.
And they'll remember that memory forever, won't they, about meeting you today, and they'll tell their friends about it. And I suppose there's an obligation for you to be nice and give them what they want, what they expect of you, because you don't want people saying bad things about you.
No, you don't, but I think the important thing is that it doesn't go to your head, that you realise that they're coming there because of what you do and your fortunate position of, with Gardener's World and Ground Force, of being in their sitting room twice a week. And there aren't a lot of people apart from the newsreaders who do that, but also they see you as you in my programmes. I'm playing myself, as opposed to playing a character in a soap opera or just reading the news. So they do get to feel they know you, and people come up and say, I feel as though I know you. And when you go away and think about that, you want to say, well, you do, because what you see is what you get, and that's me.
The book's called Trowel and Error, which is a funny title. It was a quote from Sir David Frost, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was on a television show once, and he introduced me as the man who made his way in life by trowel and error. And I thought, I rather like that. I rather enjoyed puns. So I asked him before the book came out if it might have been used as the title, and he was chuffed to bits. He said, no, dear boy, absolutely fine. So he was great about it.
It's a great book, and I read it on holiday last week, which is always the best place to read a book because you can really get into it, and I didn't put it down for the whole week. And the one thing I liked about it was that it's not about who you've slept with and who you want to slag off and who you haven't enjoyed working with. It's about you and your life. A lot of books these days seem the need to have to give all their personal details out to sell the book.
It's been very interesting these past couple of weeks, hasn't it, watching, because I don't recall an autumn where so many biographies have come out. I mean, I haven't called this an autobiography because autobiography sounded to me to be terribly kind of grand, and it's what politicians did. But that's why I called it a memoir. But I mean, it is autobiographical, and there's been an absolute deluge of them. And yeah, I mean, a couple in particular from ladies who shall be nameless, but everybody knows who they are, who've sort of spilled the beans on people they've slept with. Now, I haven't really got anybody exciting that I slept with, and I do talk about the wife. But the other thing, what's been very interesting is just interesting, how very dispassionate I am, is you look at the newspapers and they're absolutely plastered for about a week, but I don't think the books are doing much, which is a very interesting observation. I don't say that smugly, as a kind of competitor, but I don't really think that people want to know the sordid and intimate details of who you've been with and what you've done. The driver's just got out. He's shutting the boot.
Did you leave it open?
I must have left it open when I got in. Are we live? Yes, I don't think... Well, I think it's proven in a way. People think... They're curious to hear that X slept with Y, but they don't really want a blow-by-blow account. And as far as I'm concerned, I certainly don't want to know the colour of their knickers. It's not for me. It's not my style.
What are the colour of your knickers? I'm sure there's some ladies would like to know.
I'm sure they would. That's for me to know and you to wonder.
We're on the road today with Alan Titchmarsh. We're in the back of the car talking to him about his life and his career. Born on May 2nd, 1949. That makes you how old? Do we need to say that?
Come on, where's your maths? 53.
That'll be it then. And interesting childhood. Born in Ilkley Moor on Nelson Road. And you had an interesting childhood. We're going to talk a lot about your life, but the childhood bit's interesting because from a very early age, you knew about gardening and wanted to be one, didn't you?
Yeah, kind of. I absorbed it, I think, from being tiny. And I've got a photo, which is in the book, of me on my granddad's allotment when I was about a year, if that, in little baggy bloomers. And I've always been outside, and I get a bit ratty if I get cooped up for too long. And it just seemed... I didn't choose gardening. Gardening chose me, or the outdoors chose me. And I was always fishing down by the river. The book opens with me talking about paddling in the River Wharf. And it was just, looking back on it, the most blissful childhood. It was a bit like a cross between Larkrise to Candleford and Cider with Rosie, really. Just being out there, and of course you only remember the good weather. And the snow. Remember the snow. But I'm a guy who was fortunate enough to find out what he liked and to have the nerve to pursue it.
Talking about the hot weather, you were born during a very hot summer, and your mum Bessie's never really forgotten that, has she? Never forgiven you for it?
No, she hasn't really. Every time we talk about when I was... Yes, of course you were born during a heat wave, and I nearly burst a blood vessel. Too much information, Mother. Thank you.
It's very interesting, the mother and son relationship. No matter how famous you become, you're still their son. And she hasn't really read your books all the way through. She's got to about page 14 and packed in.
That's right, she leaves them by a bedside table or on the table so people can see them. And she swanks, she occasionally has to pop into hospital. And she'll leave them. She always has to take the books with her to leave them on the bedside table. Not to read, just to show. But, it's not quite like Ronnie Corbett in Sorry, Timothy, come here, you're never too big for a smack. But I don't know, I think Northern lads and their mums, there is always that relationship there, and mum is the boss. My dad, bless him, who died in 1986, was the classic quiet type of Yorkshireman, the yes dear type of Yorkshireman, but he ruled the household just extremely quietly. But mum is mum, but there is, I remember going to see her when she was in hospital once, and she said, have you brought those photographs I asked you to bring? Because she said the nurses wanted. I said, yes. Yeah. And you just want... I don't go around... There are two kinds of celebrity. Those that go out sort of making royal progress, saying, hello. And I don't go around that. I go around... I'm me, I just go. And if people say hello, I say hello. But I don't kind of expect any kind of adulation or anything. It can be a nuisance. So when I go to see an hospital, I just go and I sit by the bed and chat. So she said, did you bring those photographs? Yes. Right. And she then shouted across to a nurse, nurse, come over here, please. Was it you who wanted one of these photographs signed by my son? And she said, no, not really. So I just sat sheepishly in the corner going 7 shades of beetroot and wishing I wasn't there.
There's nothing more humbling than people sometimes, is there?
No, that's right. I'd have been quite happy not to bother, But no, mother insisted. Oh, I'm sure it was her, really, she said. She's just being difficult.
Now, I want to talk about your father, because I think you have a northern relationship with your father. It was handshakes and things like that. But I know you still miss him a lot. And just talk to us about your relationship with your father.
Well, he was, as I say, he was that quiet kind of Yorkshireman, not the call a spade a bloody shovel. He wasn't one of those. He was a quiet man with a flat hat, and he was a plumber. And my dad could make the newspaper last forever. He would even read the small ads and the situations vacant and the horses, ponies and clothes horses for sale columns, probably actually just for a bit of peace and quiet when you think about it, with me, my sister and my mum in the house. But he very quietly was instrumental in getting me on the road to doing what I wanted to do. He was a plumber and a part-time fireman, and Wally Gell, who was another part-time fireman, worked on the Parks Department nursery. And I'd said that I wanted to leave school at 15, which I think must have filled them with more horror than they admitted or were prepared to admit. And they thought, well, they'd seen that I'd always gardened since I was about 10, and I'd kept saying I wanted to be a gardener. And they clearly both had this powwow where they thought, well, we'll give him a crack at it. Let's just see if it's a flash in the pan. And they let me do it. Then my dad, who was the fireman, said Wally Gell says there's a job going in the parks, you see. So I remember this first day at work, and it was, my life changed overnight from being in a school at 15 and doing what I didn't want to do with teachers who didn't seem to think I had any talent or brain, and I don't think I did much then, to suddenly go into an environment that I felt completely at home in. And my dad, bless his heart, was sagacious enough to let me have a go at it. But yes, it was that relationship. I mean, I think I was interested in drama as well. Well, when you grew up in those days, we're talking about the 50s and 60s, in Yorkshire, a lad who was interested in drama was clearly a fairy, or something like that. And not that my father ever said anything like that at all, but I could see that there was this kind of nervous worry there that his lad was going to grow up to be not quite what he would have hoped.
You kind of raised an eyebrow, did you, or something?
Yes, and when I came home from Leeds once with an umbrella, I had to hide it behind the sofa. That's in the book. And then blow me, when about 2 years later, when I wouldn't be seen dead with an umbrella, my dad purloined it, and he carried it then. Every Sunday he carried that umbrella forever. But it was, I think I was a bit of a worry to him. And when you're little, your dad up there kisses you, but then when you get to be sort of early teens, and later on in life, when I got married and moved down south, my dad would come down, and my sister, she came as well, would say, do you know, it's really weird when you and dad say hello and you shake hands. She said it's like two businessmen. Well, I thought that was ridiculous. I was, as I say, married and about 35 by then, so I started giving him a hug when he came after that, and then he was quite happy, and we used to kiss on the cheek again after. But it's a funny thing, isn't it, that it's a very northern thing that... did he think I was going to turn into a Nancy if he kept kissing me when I was 20? You know, a daft thing to think, isn't it? Seems that had any effect on you at all?
Your childhood at school, you talk about with mixed affection in the book. It taught you a lot, obviously, about people, I think, and you developed there socially with people. But I don't know whether it was necessarily a very happy time for you.
The junior years at school were. I had a lovely teacher called Mr. Rhodes when I was at junior school. He grew cacti. In spite of that, he was a very nice man. And he was friendly and encouraging. He was the kind who, if you said, I don't think I can do that, would say, of course you can. Come on, Alan, give it a go. Whereas the others, when you'd say, I can do that. No, you can't, Titchmarsh. Sit down and shut up, you know. And I think one is very conscious at that time of life of the enablers and the encouragers and the ones who squash you. And I think, to be fair, I was probably a tiresome little brat, always sticking his hand up and always saying, miss, me, you know, shut up. I mean, I think I'd have probably said it to myself if I'd have been there. But the junior years, I did enjoy it. But then when I got to secondary school, I just seemed to be a square peg in a round hole and doing subjects I didn't want to. And I was a classic late developer. My brain or intellect, if I have any, had developed. I didn't seem to be able to absorb anything. Maths was and still is a complete conundrum. But I loved words. I couldn't grow things at school because rural studies, as it was then, was only for the B, C and D streams, and I was at least in the A stream, even though I was an 11 plus failure at secondary school. So words I found great solace in, and I found that if you knew big ones, you could get on when you weren't very... I could run fast because I was little. I was only 4'10" when I left school, and I grew to about 4 or 5'9" in a year under glass. So it wasn't happy, and then as soon as I found the nursery, I was out of there and growing plants.
The theatre you talk about, and you talk about being a Nancy boy if you're an actor, but some of your earlier dalliances happened there, didn't they?
Oh, at school, yes. I was playing Shylock in a very, very, very abridged version of A Merchant of Venice. I don't think there was much of Shakespeare left. But we had these two girls who were playing Portia. One of them was Jill, who I'd sent a Valentine to, and she'd sent one back. And the other one was a girl called Julia. And Julia was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. And I remember standing in the wings. They had played alternate nights. I played Charlotte right the way through. And I remember standing in the wings, first sort of youthful yearnings, thinking, oh, this girl was really quite tasty. And she had a sort of off-the-shoulder blouse on as Portia. And she bent down to stick her chewing gum under a chair.
And earlier, Alan, we were talking about your childhood and your days at school. And when you were young, another facet of your life, which is quite interesting, is religion.
Yeah, my dad was in the back row of the choir. He was a tenor. And he and my mum used to ring the bells. And I started. I always had a decent treble as a boy. I had a good voice. I mean, I've got a rather reedy one now. It didn't break terribly. Well, it never really broke. It just gradually lowered. But I did sing in the front row, and I became head boy. And I used to love singing. It was a great sort of form of expression. And I did the usual things that a choir boy does. Once in Royal, the first verse from the back of the church, absolute terror of and thinking my voice will crack, it'll go, I won't be able to do it. But I did love singing, and then church was an important part of life, still is. I don't go 3 times on a Sunday now, which I used to do, but it is very quietly. Just get on with it. Part of me.
You were in fact lead chorister at one point, weren't you? Probably
only because of age. It was probably what Frank Muir used to call a sale prize. Stick around long enough. And yes, I was lead head boy on Cantoris, which is looking up the church's left-hand side. And as I said, my voice never really properly broke, and when I started work at 15, I thought it was rather embarrassing to still be a choir boy, so I slipped into the back row then and sang tenor, or tried to.
Let's talk about gardening, how it all started. At a very early age, something like 10, you said that you would replace Percy Thrower, didn't you? That's a brave thing to say.
It wasn't a realistic prediction. It wasn't kind of, Gypsy Rose Titchmarsh saying, I will replace Percy. It was a ridiculous aspiration, but Mickey Hudson, who lived opposite and me, used to sow seeds in our back gardens, and we always used to watch Percy Chucker, as we used to call him, Percy Thrower, on a Friday night, and gardening club it was then. And we were talking about jobs, what we wanted to do, and I said I wanted Percy Chucker's job because that would be the one to do. I'd love to do that. Never really believing there was any chance of it. It wasn't actually until I wrote Trial and Error that the scariness of it hit me. Sort of 59 million people in Britain, what are the odds that I would take over from him? Just don't go there, Alan, it's frightening. But life finds you out, I think, and sort of sends you where you're meant to go. Mickey, on the other hand, was so keen on gardening that he said he wanted to be a postman, because he said postmen have finished work by 10 o'clock and they can go home and garden all afternoon. And he became a bank manager. But about 2 months ago, walking on the Grove in Ilkley, I bumped into his sister. And I said, how's Mickey? I haven't seen this lad I still haven't met him, since we were, 12, 13. I said, how's Mickey? Is he still a bank manager? She said, no, he's given up that now. He's a postman. I did not want to ask her if he was gardening in the afternoons, because I didn't want to know that he'd gone off it,
You talk in the book about Ilkley being, in your mind as a child, a million miles away from London, and the thought of London was just an alien concept and being a star. Did you ever dream that you would be sat here now talking to someone like me in the back of a limo?
No, and I think you kind of go with life, really. There are so many opportunities. I remember, I've done interviewing myself, which was great fun at Pebble Mill, and got to interview loads and loads of folk, among them Dirk Bogarde, who said to me, talking of this kind of feeling, he said, too many people go through life with one solitary goal, one solitary aim, and it's like a door at the end of a very long corridor, and they're aiming for that door. He said, and sometimes when they get there, it's bolted fast and they can't get through. He said, and they fail to notice all the little side doors that are open down that corridor with people saying, oh, do you want to come in here? And often they lead actually by a circuitous route to that end, inside that end door. And I think it's a very simplistic simile, but it's true. I think if you have an idea of kind of where you want to go, but along the way accept the pleasant diversions. A lot of people say, you've been very lucky. And indeed I have, but I've taken risks. That's why the book's called Trial and Error. There have been mistakes, things have gone wrong. I've done foolhardy things. I went freelance when I had my first child on the way. Left a really good job as deputy editor of a magazine because I knew it wasn't right for me. So I've taken my courage in both hands and tripped up sometimes as well. But I've never regretted doing what I've done.
You started in writing, and people often forget that you are a gardener at heart, and you started as a gardener, you wanted to be a gardener, and the TV interviewing side is just another extra on the side. People forget that. When you did Pebble Mill particularly, I think you really were in the fore then, and people thought, oh, he's just an interviewer, and then you came back doing gardening, and they thought that was an extra. It's not true though, is it?
I love just an interviewer. As you know, it's extremely easy, isn't it? You don't have to do any research. You don't have to be at all interested.
I'm thinking of turning professional one of these days, but a critique at the end is always wanted.
Give it a go. Yeah, well, I always kept the gardening. I mean, in the days when it said on your passport what your job was, I always kept gardener there because, going back to my dad, don't give up the day job, Alan. And I never have. I'll always be a gardener by inclination as well as profession.
You've had an interesting path in learning about gardening, because that's what it's about. It's about the research, and you know your plants inside out. You started off at the Ilkley Urban District Council Parks, and then you ended up at Kew. That's quite a jump, isn't it?
A quantum leap, isn't it? I remember the thrill, though, of that first day at work with a greenhouse full of geraniums, just thinking I'd died and gone to heaven. The foreman said, this greenhouse is yours. It was an enormous great run of 3 Victorian greenhouses with brass doorknobs. I said, what do you mean mine? He said, they're yours, you look after these 3. And I can still, even when I'm recalling it now, I can remember exactly how that moment felt, and it was just like, it was almost like the Hallelujah chorus, you're like, oh, Hallelujah, can you really do, is it really mine? And again, when I went to Kew, I was given charge of half the palm house, that enormous great Decimus Burton greenhouse by the pond, and I was looking after cycads, which are these primitive palms that had been collected by Captain Cook. And it was the same sort of thing, except then it was blind terror that I'd kill them. When they're 200, 250 years old, you're pretty scared that you might do them some harm.
What we're going to do now, Alan, is hear from people who were yesterday coming to the book signing, and let's see what they feel about you. I know this is a nervous moment because they might not like you, you never know.
I don't want to hear this.
Okay, let's have a listen.
I think he's great, but I remember him from when he was 9 years old in the youth club at Oakley Parish Church when I was up there, and I followed his career through then.
Very good programme. I wish he'd come do my garden.
Really?
Yeah, bring Charlie Dimmock with him, yeah.
You like Charlie, do you?
Yeah. Oh, all right, Knocker, yeah.
He's lovely, really lovely. Just very natural.
Now, you look quite young. You see, the older ladies normally like him. Are you a big fan then?
My mum.
Oh, it's for your mum.
But I think he's lovely too.
What do you think his best qualities are then?
He's just normal. He's just, like everybody else. Yeah, very natural. Just a nice man.
Just so down to earth. He's, you can get in there with him and start doing some of the things that he gets done as well.
He's inspired us to get an allotment, and now we have 2 allotments. So I know he's flower based, but we do like our vegetables as well.
He's very nice, yes, very natural.
Do you remember him from Pebble Mill?
Oh, crikey, you're trying to tell my age.
It was only a few years ago, it wasn't too long ago.
Yeah.
He was a good interviewer, wasn't he? He listens to people.
He's smashing, yes. He's cuddly.
He's cuddly. Yeah. You think he's a nice bit of trouser, do you?
Yeah, I do. I'd have him for a toy boy any day.
I'm his biggest fan.
What is it about him that you really like then?
Don't want my dad to listen. He's lovely, he's really nice, he's so charming and just easy to understand, and it's just very, very sexy.
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
29.
29. You see, because we've got ladies of all kind of ages here, and he seems to cross the boundaries, doesn't he? Everybody likes Alan.
Yeah, I've liked him for about 4 or 5 years now. I've had a kiss off him already.
What, today?
No, last year at Gardeners World Live. I can't wait to see him upstairs.
You seem rather popular. It's rather peculiar that people would stand there for hours waiting for you to sign a book, really.
You promise you won't tell them what I'm really like, that's the thing.
We're on the road today with Alan Titchmarsh in the back of the limo, touring the country with his new book, Trowel and Error. It's out, it's $18.99, you can get it, and it's about his life. And we've talked about your childhood, we've talked about being a gardener. We're now going to talk about your wife, who you met in 1972, and you've since had 2 children. And I know she's the big love of your life, isn't she? And the thing that's most important.
How can I say no after an introduction like that? Yeah, I mean, sheet anchor, really. And you go, 27 years is a long time to still quite like somebody at the end. But we rub along, and we're just us, really. And I think it's very important when you look at everything that goes on and you see other people having great difficulties. I mean, it makes you count your blessings, but I think also it makes you think, particularly in the public eye there, but for the grace of God, you've got to. It's not always easy. Have your ups and downs. Everybody does, but she's always been there for me. Always kept my feet on the ground, and I think that's very important. I think if you start living your life as a celebrity, and when you get up in the morning, you think, "Oh, I'm Alan Titchmarsh. What am I going to do?" You can't do that. That's no way to live.
Have you ever woke up in the morning and looked at yourself in the mirror and gone, I'm fabulous?
I remember that lovely Peter Sellers film. Was it that A Girl in My Soup, wasn't it? And he used to look in the mirror and he said, my God, but you're lovely. No, I don't think, no, I haven't. Some days, like everybody, I think I look better than others. I mean, I used to, funnily enough, about a year ago, if we'd go out and a lot of people had stopped me, I'd turn to the wife and say, I must look a lot like Alan Titchmarsh today. It happens every day now, so I don't say it anymore. But no, I think I've improved with age. I probably look as good now as I've ever looked, but it's going to go over the hill soon. I think men are a bit like oak trees, They mature late, but then suddenly they go over the hill and fall to bits.
Or a good wine.
Yes, but you mature, as it used to say, mature like a good wine and improve with age, or you can mature like a cheese and just get up people's noses.
Now, I want to talk to you about your children, because one of the most touching bits of the book that I want to talk about now is when your wife fell down the stairs with your baby. That must have been the most horrific thing to see and to cope with.
That's the ultimate question in an interview, isn't it? Yeah. It was horrendous. We lived in a little tiny terrace house. It was the first house we lived in. We've only ever lived in 2, just about to move to a 3rd. And it had a very steep staircase. And I just heard this scream and great thumpings and bangings, and found Alison with Polly in her arms in this little sort of square yard at the bottom, the square yard of floorboards at the bottom of the stairs right by the front door. It wasn't a hall, it was just a little doormat really, and she was screwed her face up in agony, and the baby was in her arms, and she couldn't get up, and she'd shattered her elbow, and the child had fractured its skull. And I went to the hospital with them and sat all through the night, going from bed to bed, between one and the other, both of them unconscious, thinking life had ended. It was terrible. The following day, Alison's arm was in a terrible state, and she still hasn't got full movement in it, but the following day, Polly cut her first tooth, the fractured skull healed, and they pulled round, but I wouldn't want to go there again.
I suppose being sat there in that hospital must have just been every father's and husband's worst nightmare.
It was. There was a mobile on this iron cot that Polly was in, and I wound it up, and on the back of it, well, there was this little rhyme which said, "When at night I go to sleep, 14 angels watch do keep, 2 to whom 'tis given to guide my steps to heaven." And I just sat and read that all night and wept, really. It was a terrible time. But they're lovely now. She's 22 now, Polly. And she's done quite well for herself.
You got Camilla as well now?
Yeah, Camilla's 20. She's doing drama. And Polly's teaching, at the moment, autistic children.
Are they proud or embarrassed, or how do they feel about their dad being the god to many, Alan Titchmarsh?
They're probably a bit of both. They don't tell me about the proud bit, I only get the embarrassed bit. But I think that's as it should be. It's a father's duty to embarrass his daughters, and it's a duty I fulfil very well.
You try harder?
I don't think I need to try any harder from their point of view, but they're a good pair. They're good company, and I think if you... Ali and I always said that the most important thing was that we hoped, and you can't, you always hope you'll do things right, but there's no blueprint for bringing up children. We just hope they would always keep talking, keep the channels of communication open. You have those times where they think you're a pain in the bum, and being a dad, it's difficult not to be sometimes, because it's funny enough, it's something I explored in one of my novels, Only Dad, is the difference between relationships in a father and a son and a father and a daughter. And a father of a daughter, I think, and any dad with a girl out there will understand, you go through life as their shield and protector. You see yourself as that. Not that you want to sort of stop them having a relationship with any other man, but you are very aware of the fact that you are responsible for them, and you try very hard sometimes to hold back a bit from it, not be too oppressive, but you worry about them. Of course you do. That's what they're there for, to be worried about.
Have you been known to put a quiet word in boyfriends' ears?
No, I wouldn't do that. No, it's not fair. I used to tease them both and say, I don't mind who you bring back as long as they can hold their own at the dinner table, which sounded terribly pompous and Victorian. But I know it's up to them. As long as they're, nice lads with a bit of conversation and they're all right. But it must be doubly intimidating. Not only are they coming home to meet the girl's father, but when it's him off the telly, it must be doubly daunting.
Absolutely, but something to, I would think that would be a good thing that they would tell other friends about, and it would be appealing, do you not think?
Well, yeah, but then, of course, you've always got that worry. Are they only going out with him because they're his daughter? What a dreadful thing to say, Alan. What else is that going to impress anybody with? No, I think it's something that I think they've learned to live with. Is they've found their true friends, and good friends last.
We were talking about your home earlier, and that's really been the focus of the TV show, the gardening programme, on for many, many years, very, very successful. But has that been an intrusion into your privacy? Has that lost anything, do you think, for the family?
I think it's been very difficult for them. As you said, Ali and I have been married for 27 years. I've been on the box since 1979. For sort of 23 of them, and our garden has always been a film set. It's been our garden primarily. I never wanted to build a series of studios within my garden, but at the same time I've had film crews there every week. The girls have never been able to sunbathe. There have been other compensations in life, Dad's done all right, but they have had to, cope with the fact that film crews were always around, and now with moving house, this is going to be our first garden for us after 27 years. And people say, are you going to have Gardeners World there? And no, not because I want to keep you out. I'd always show anybody around my garden. No, it's private, but I have friends round, but I do want this to be a bit quieter. I think I owe it to my family now to let them have a bit of peace and quiet in the garden. And it has been... It had not got more difficult, but I'll tell you what was tricky. On Gardener's World, I always did it on my own from my garden, and then the other presenters started coming and digging and planting things. And I'm very fond of Rachel and Joe and co. As individuals. They're great folk, and we get on like a house on fire. But it's very difficult having someone else dig your soil and plant things in your garden. And I do resent that a bit. I tell them it, I admit it to them. And that's quite tricky. So it has been a bit... well, not difficult, because it's not difficult, but you kind of feel your garden's been taken away from you a bit. So with this new one, I shall enjoy it being mine again, really. And viewers are very observant. They don't miss a lot. Two instances of this. One, when Jeff Hamilton died, and I took over Gardener's World. For a start, he was a friend, and that was the greatest loss. I'd been lined up to present Gardener's World in the Easter, but Jeff died the previous summer, so I had to leap in earlier. I've been doing it for about 2 months, and a woman wrote to me and said, I'm very worried about you. This is a viewer, but it wasn't a cranky letter, it was very straightforward. She said, please give yourself time to grieve. You're picking up all the pieces, and everybody's watching you do it, and just, which I thought was totally understanding. And you do get... And a woman wrote to me about Gardener's World in later years. No, she didn't write to me. She came up to me at a book signing, and she said, I don't like all these other people in your garden. So I said, why not? Well, she said, because I like sharing it with you. I like you sharing it with just me and not with them. And it's an interesting conundrum. So there we are.
The programme's great because you feel you're getting an insight into your real life, and it is your back garden, it is your real house. Although you've put several extensions on the house, I know you write in the book, it's become your own, and the garden's certainly developed over many years. But I suppose to them it's an intimate thing between you and them.
Well, it is, and it cuts both ways. I mean, I feel that as well. And I do have 4 or 5 million people around my garden every Friday night. They don't leave a footprint, which is lovely. But I do feel it's their garden, and it's the garden of a lot of people who haven't got one. And 2 or 3 times in a year we'll do this walk from the bottom of the garden to the top up the hill and show people where the different bits sit so they can get the geography. And I love doing that. That bit is wonderful. It's been a real pleasure to share doing it, and I'm going to miss that at the new place, not being able to say to people, who I can't see, here, come and look at this, you'll like this, because when a gardener does do something, if you've got a lovely plant in your garden that bursts into flower, you go next door and say, just come and look at this. And I've been able to do that, and I don't undervalue that at all.
Are you going to miss the garden when you move?
Hugely. I mean, I've made it over 20 years. It's going to be a real wrench. I'm in denial, I think, at the moment. I'm upset to find about it, no problem. No, it's okay, I'm taking a few pots with me, but nothing else. And then I sat down yesterday and looked over the pond, this little wooden decking with a seat on it that looks over that big pond, and I sat on it yesterday. It was quite a dull day, and looked at my water lily, and had this great stab of, you're not going to be able to do this after a few weeks' time, and it's going to be a wrench. But I've got a new garden to make, and I really do want another chance to make another garden, and it's around an old Georgian house, so a chance to have another crack would be wonderful.
We're on the road today with Alan Titchmarsh in this exclusive hour special with me, Alex Belfield. Still to come, we're going to talk to Alan about Ground Force. But before that, I wanted to talk to you about being an author, because you've had several #1 hit books like Mr. McGregor. And I was just wondering if this is your second love after gardening. It seems to be.
I think it is, because it's a kind of one-to-one relationship, not with a piece of paper, but with your imagined reader, I suppose. I do like telling stories. And to have the nerve after so many years to think, would I be allowed to write fiction, and to give it a blast, and to find that I was allowed and people like reading it. I only write stories, I don't write anything seminal, but they're good, hopefully, classic holiday books that you can disappear into when you just want to go somewhere else. And Mr. McGregor was the first about a TV gardener. And I wrote one called The Last Lighthouse Keeper, which is all about my love for boats. I mean, not about me, they're about characters and what happens to them. And Animal Instincts, which is all about conservation and animals, and a lad who takes over his dad's nature reserve. And then Only Dad, which kind of explored this father-daughter relationship. But it's been lovely to write. I'm doing another one now for next winter. So, yes, writing is definitely my second love after gardening.
Now then, other than the books, you've got your TV shows. So many of them, we forget them. I'm going to list some of them. You started on Nationwide. That's where we have first memories of you. Then you went to Breakfast Time. And of course, you really hit it big with Pebble Mill in 87. You were there for 7 years.
I was there for
10. 10 years, really?
Yes, it was Pebble Mill for several. It started off as Daytime Live. So, yeah, 87 to 96. That's what I was there for 10 years.
And so many stars.
I know, everybody. Alan Bennett, Placido Domingo. Oh, they just keep coming out of the woodwork. I mean, Julia Roberts, that was fun. Enjoyed that. She's a keen gardener, you know, Julia Roberts.
Really?
Not a lot of people know that.
No. And Bette Davis, tell me about her.
Well, she walked out. I asked her if she thought Ronald Reagan would have made a good Rhett Butler, and she left the room, and I never saw her again. I've never felt so embarrassed in my life. But she didn't have much of a sense of humour.
Do you find with some celebrities that the bigger they are, the nicer they are, or is there any rule or pattern to it?
The general rule of thumb is that most of them are great to get on with, and the older and the more professional they are, generally, the better they are. Sometimes there are sort of some younger ones who become soap stars quite quickly, who don't really know how to carry themselves. But in general, most of them are fine. One or two tricky ones, but I wouldn't name them.
You've had huge success with your TV shows, but there have been some critics, and one very nasty man said the 5 most debilitating words are "ladies and gentlemen, Alan Titchmarsh." How do you cope with that kind of criticism?
Victor Lewis Smith, he's a very good writer. It really wounds you, particularly at the beginning, when you first hear it. And yeah, I mean, but you know, if you can't stand the heat, keep out of the kitchen. Not everybody's going to like you. You just have to realise that and get used to it. But if you can be true to yourself and try and do a good job, that's your only way through it. But it's tough, it's hard. Nobody likes to hear people insult them, and when you're on the box, I'm afraid it's going to happen.
Do you think that the key to success with show business and performing or whatever is closing your ears to things and just getting on with it and not listening to the critics and not listening to the adulation either, so you just focus on what you do?
Yes, I do. I think it's very important. If you can be your own judge of whether or not you're doing a good job, and the people you work with will help you to do a better job, and they're the ones that you want to rely on in terms of whether or not you're performing well or you're doing a good job. It is better just not to go down either of the other avenues. You will have to a bit. And sitting here now with you telling me what I've done, it feels a bit like, I haven't. I've done really rather well for myself. No, don't go there. Don't do that, Alan. Just crack on with it and, you know, keep your eye on the goalposts and don't let them move.
One of your latest successes has been Ground Force, which is hugely popular. I know you've got a new video out as well this Christmas with your best bits. An amazing success that really came from nothing, really. It could just have been another average show that you've made your own, and it's turned into this huge phenomena.
I think it surprised all of us, but it's the combination, I think, of humour, of 3 people getting on with one another, not always, but at least certainly rubbing along, and of the transformation scene. I think the Victorians did it in Panto, and it was an established device then. Kids sit glued to it because they see, over the space of half an hour, this complete transformation.
Well, we've arrived at your first destination today. Thank you very much for spending the time talking to us. How exhausted are you already, knowing you've got a day ahead of you of meeting thousands and thousands of people you've got to smile with, have photos taken with? How do you feel now?
I feel as if I've been lightly grilled in the back of the car, really. No, all right, it'd be good to see them. As soon as you get in there, you know, you're on, and they'll be jolly, and I hope, if they're there. But no, I'm fine.
I mean, I'm not a professional interviewer, but interviewing another interviewer is always difficult because you know where I'm going wrong. How do you rate me out of 10?
Out of 10, I'll give you a good 9.5.
Oh, you're a good man. Good luck with the book signing. Good luck with the new book. It's called
Trowel and Error.
And it's available for $18.99. The new video's out as well with Ground Force, all the best bits. It's been an honour and a pleasure talking to you today. We'll end with the theme tune from Ground Force because that's made the show successful as well, hasn't it?
Black Dyke Band, and I conducted it once, and it's the most wonderfully umpar piece of music. Jim Parker, great composer.
Alan Titchmarsh, thank you very much for talking to us on the road today.
My pleasure.